The soft chime of Prosperity Financial's glass doors announced Amara Jackson's arrival. Her heels clicked confidently across the polished marble floor, a sound that always reminded her of her mother's advice. Walk like you own the room, because someday you might. Today, that sound echoed through the bank's grand lobby with particular resonance. Amara adjusted her tailored navy suit and straightened the leather portfolio containing her immaculate business plan, loan application, and 5 years of stellar financial statements for Elevation Tech Solutions, the IT consulting firm she had built from nothing after years of steady growth. She was ready for a significant expansion that would allow her to hire 20 more employees and open a second location downtown. Welcome to Prosperity Financial. How may I help you today? The teller's voice pulled Amara from her thoughts. His name tag read Daniel Parker, and his smile didn't quite reach his eyes as they flicked over her face and then down to her documents. I have an appointment with Mr. Richardson about a business loan, Amara replied, her voice measured and professional. Amara Jackson, CEO of Elevation Tech Solutions. Daniel's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Of course, Ms. Jackson. If you could please have a seat, I'll let Mr. Richardson know you're here. As Amara waited in the plush seating area, she observed the bank's operations. The interior was designed to project stability and success dark with paneling, brass fixtures, and historical photographs of the city showcasing Prosperity Financial's long-standing presence. Yet despite its venerable appearance, Amara knew this branch had been struggling lately, like many traditional banks facing competition from online financial services. Ms. Jackson? Daniel had returned. Mr. Richardson sends his apologies, but he's been called into an emergency meeting. I'll be handling your loan application today. Amara's eyebrow raised slightly. This wasn't standard protocol for a loan of this size, but she simply nodded and followed Daniel to a small glass-walled office. So you're looking for quite a substantial business loan, Daniel began, leafing through her documents with what seemed like cursory interest. Yes, $750,000 for expansion of Elevation Tech Solutions, Amara confirmed. As you can see from our financials, we've maintained consistent growth of 15% year over year for the past 5 years, and our current debt-to-income ratio is well within your bank's preferred parameters for business lending. Daniel nodded without looking up. And you're the sole owner? I am. I founded the company 6 years ago. That's impressive, Daniel said, though his tone suggested otherwise. An IT consulting firm, correct? That's quite a competitive market. It is, which is why we've specialized in cybersecurity solutions for healthcare providers. It's a niche with growing demand and relatively few qualified providers. Amara explained, sliding forward a market analysis document. As you can see, our client retention rate is 94%, well above industry average. For the next 45 minutes, Amara answered questions about her business model, expansion plans, and financial projections. With each answer, she provided clear, data-driven evidence supporting her loan application. Yet Daniel seemed to find new questions, new concerns, new reasons to furrow his brow as he made notes on his computer. Your personal credit score is quite good, Ms. Jackson, Daniel finally acknowledged, but I do see you had a late payment on a credit card 3 years ago. Amara kept her expression neutral, despite her rising frustration. Yes, there was an issue with automatic payment during a period when I was traveling internationally for business. It was resolved immediately upon my return, and as you can see, there have been no issues since. Still, it does indicate a certain lack of attention to detail, Daniel suggested, his tone professorial despite being at least 5 years younger than Amara. In business lending, these small indicators often reflect larger patterns. I understand the importance of careful financial management, Amara replied evenly, which is why Elevation Tech has maintained perfect payment history with all vendors and creditors since our founding, including 2 smaller business loans that were repaid ahead of schedule. Daniel closed her portfolio with a finality that made Amara's heart sink. She knew what was coming before he spoke. I'm afraid Prosperity Financial won't be able to approve this loan application at this time, Ms. Jackson. While your business shows promise, we find the expansion plan overly ambitious given current market conditions. I'd suggest scaling back your growth plans and perhaps reapplying in 6 to 12 months. The rejection stung, but it wasn't unfamiliar. Amara had faced such obstacles before: the subtle shifts in criteria, the raising of invisible bars, the sudden concerns about risk factors that somehow didn't apply to others. "May I ask what specific aspect of my application failed to meet your requirements?" Amara asked, her voice calm but firm. "My financials exceed your published guidelines for business loans of this size." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Lending decisions involve multiple factors beyond the raw numbers, Ms. Jackson. It's not just about meeting minimum requirements. There's an element of judgment involved." "Judgment," Amara repeated carefully. "I see. Perhaps another financial institution might have different criteria," Daniel suggested, standing to indicate the meeting was over. "Best of luck with your business." Amara gathered her documents with deliberate care, tucking them into her portfolio before standing. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Parker. I appreciate your judgment." As she walked out of Prosperity Financial, Amara's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from her assistant. "Board meeting confirmed for 4 p.m. All members will be present." A small smile played at the corner of Amara's lips as she texted back. "Perfect. Tell them I'll be bringing an interesting proposition to the table." Amara hadn't always been a CEO. 20 years earlier, she'd been a scholarship student working nights at a convenience store to supplement her financial aid. The daughter of a postal worker and a high school teacher, Amara had grown up understanding the value of education, hard work, and persistence. Her journey into tech began in a community college computer lab, where she discovered an aptitude for systems and problem solving that eventually earned her a transfer scholarship to complete her degree in computer science at the State University. Even then, she stood out, often the only black woman in her advanced courses. "You don't look like a programmer," a professor once remarked during her first week of classes. "Not yet," Amara had replied, "but I'm about to change what programmers look like." After graduation, she worked for 3 major tech companies, steadily climbing the ladder despite consistently being mistaken for administrative staff. In meetings, her ideas would be passed over, only to be praised when repeated by male colleagues. During her performance reviews, she was labeled aggressive for the same behaviors that earned her white male peers descriptions like assertive and leadership material. Rather than becoming bitter, Amara became strategic. She documented everything, built a network of allies, and most importantly, saved every penny she could. When she finally left corporate America to start Elevation Tech Solutions, she did so with enough capital to sustain herself for 1 year. She had given herself 12 months to either succeed or return to the corporate world. Within 6 months, she had secured her first major client. By the end of the year, she had hired her first 2 employees. 5 years later, Elevation Tech Solutions employed 35 people and served healthcare providers across 3 states. But throughout her journey, financing remained a consistent challenge. Amara had been forced to bootstrap her growth, reinvesting profits rather than taking on the debt that might have allowed faster expansion. The few times she had secured business loans, the terms had been less favorable than those offered to comparable businesses owned by white men, a fact she knew from her extensive network of fellow entrepreneurs who shared information openly. So when Amara had received a call 3 months ago from Mercer Capital Partners asking if she might be interested in joining a consortium of investors looking at undervalued financial institutions, she had recognized it as more than a business opportunity. It was a chance to change the system from within. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for meeting on such short notice," said Harold Mercer, founding partner of Mercer Capital Partners. "As you know, Prosperity Financial has been exploring strategic partnerships to address our challenging market position. Today, I'm pleased to introduce the lead investor of our prospective acquisition group, Ms. Amara Jackson." The boardroom of Prosperity Financial's downtown headquarters fell silent as Amara entered. 8 pairs of eyes belonging to 7 men and 1 woman. All but 1 white followed her as she took her position at the front of the room. "Good afternoon," Amara began, her voice commanding attention without raising in volume. "Many of you may not know me, but I know Prosperity Financial quite well. I've spent the past 3 months conducting due diligence on your institution, reviewing your loan portfolios, branch performances, technology infrastructure, and market positioning." She clicked the remote, bringing up the first slide of her presentation. What I found was an institution with strong bones but serious challenges. Your lending practices have failed to adapt to changing demographics. Your technology lags behind competitors. And perhaps most concerning, your loan approval rates show statistically significant disparities across racial and gender lines, disparities that cannot be explained by credit quality or business fundamentals. The room remained silent, though several board members shifted uncomfortably. Now, you might be wondering why I'm interested in acquiring controlling stake in a struggling regional bank, Amara continued, moving to her next slide. The answer is simple. I see potential where others see problems. Prosperity Financial has deep community roots, a loyal customer base, and most importantly, room for transformation. For the next 30 minutes, Amara outlined her vision for Prosperity Financial, a technology overhaul, community-focused lending initiatives, and a diversity-driven hiring program. She presented financial projections showing how these changes could revitalize the bank's performance within 18 months. Ms. Jackson, interrupted Walter Hargrove, the eldest board member, while your presentation is impressive, I'm struggling to understand your qualifications for leading a financial institution. Banking is a complex industry with specific regulatory requirements and traditions. Amara smiled. A fair question, Mr. Hargrove. Before founding my technology company, I spent 3 years in financial system security at Core Banking Technologies, where I worked with institutions twice the size of Prosperity. I hold an MBA with a concentration in finance alongside my technical credentials. And most relevantly, I understand what your bank is missing: the ability to serve emerging markets and adapt to changing demographics. Furthermore, she added, I'm not proposing to personally run day-to-day operations immediately. I would take the role of executive chairperson focused on strategic direction, while bringing in an experienced COO with 20 years in banking to handle operational matters. What I bring is vision, technological expertise, and an understanding of communities you're currently failing to serve. By the end of the meeting, the term sheet had been signed, subject to regulatory approval. Amara Jackson and her investment consortium would acquire a 51% controlling interest in Prosperity Financial. The press release would go out in the morning, but Amara would begin the transition immediately as acting CEO. As the board members filed out, Harold Mercer hung back. That went better than expected, he said quietly. They didn't have much choice, Amara replied. Their Q2 numbers were worse than they've admitted publicly. They needed this deal. Still, you were impressive in there. But I'm curious why start with a branch visit yesterday? You already had all the information you needed. Amara gathered her documents. I believe in seeing things from the ground up. Harold, you can review all the data in the world, but sometimes you need to experience how a business actually treats its customers. Her expression grew thoughtful. Besides, yesterday's visit confirmed everything I suspected, and it gave me clarity about where to begin our changes. Daniel Parker arrived at work 15 minutes early, as usual. He prided himself on his punctuality and professionalism, qualities he believed had put him on a fast track at Prosperity Financial. At 28, he was already handling small business loans and had been told by his manager that he was being considered for a junior loan officer position, a significant step up from his current role as senior teller. The bank was buzzing with unusual energy when he arrived. Colleagues were gathered in small clusters, whispering and occasionally glancing toward the main offices. Something was happening. What's going on? Daniel asked Melissa from customer service. Haven't you heard? The bank's been acquired. New ownership group took control last night. There's a new CEO starting today. Daniel felt a flutter of anxiety. What does that mean for us? No idea. All staff meeting at 9 o'clock to introduce the new leadership, Melissa replied before hurrying off to her desk. Daniel tried to focus on preparing his station for the day, but his mind kept circling back to what the change might mean for his promotion prospects. He'd heard stories about acquisitions leading to staffing cuts or restructuring. Would his nearly secured advancement be casualties of the transition? At precisely 9 a.m., the regional manager, Mr. Fellows, appeared on the bank floor. Everyone, please gather around. I'd like to introduce our new Chief Executive Officer. Daniel's heart nearly stopped when Amara Jackson walked in behind Mr. Fellows. She was wearing a different suit than yesterday, a striking crimson ensemble that contrasted sharply with the bank's conservative aesthetic. But she was unmistakably the woman whose loan application he had rejected less than 24 hours earlier. "Good morning, everyone," Amara began, her voice warm but authoritative. "I'm Amara Jackson, and as of today, I'll be serving as CEO of Prosperity Financial following our investment group's acquisition of a controlling interest in the bank." She continued speaking, outlining her background and vision for the bank's future, but Daniel barely heard the words. His mind was replaying yesterday's meeting in excruciating detail, his dismissive tone, his cursory review of her impeccable financials, his thinly veiled skepticism about her business acumen. Had she already been planning to buy the bank when she came in for that loan? Had his rejection somehow triggered this? Or, worse yet, had it been some kind of test that he had catastrophically failed? Which is why my first priority will be reviewing our lending practices and community engagement strategies. Amar was saying when Daniel tuned back in, "I believe Prosperity Financial can better serve all segments of our community while improving our financial performance. These goals are not mutually exclusive but mutually reinforcing." Her eyes swept across the assembled staff, pausing momentarily on Daniel. There was no obvious recognition in her gaze, but Daniel felt exposed nonetheless. "I'll be meeting with each department over the coming days to understand your perspectives and challenges," she continued. "For now, please continue with your regular duties. Change will come, but it will be thoughtful and measured. Thank you for your attention this morning." As the staff dispersed, Daniel remained frozen in place. Should he approach her, apologize, pretend yesterday never happened? Before he could decide, his phone buzzed with a calendar notification. The screen displayed a meeting invitation, one-on-one with CEO Daniel Parker, 10:30 a.m. His mouth went dry. She had singled him out for one of her first individual meetings. This couldn't be good. For the next hour and a half, Daniel went through the motions of his job, helping customers with wooden politeness while his stomach churned with anxiety. When 10:25 arrived, he straightened his tie and made his way to what had formerly been Mr. Fellow's office. Amara was reviewing documents when he knocked tentatively on the doorframe. She looked up and gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Mr. Parker, please have a seat." Daniel sat stiffly, hands clasped in his lap, to prevent them from visibly shaking. "Ms. Jackson, about yesterday." She held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "Let's start with something else. Tell me about your role here at Prosperity Financial." Thrown off balance by the unexpected direction, Daniel stumbled through an explanation of his responsibilities, his 3 years with the bank, and his hopes for advancement. Amara listened intently, occasionally making notes. "And what do you believe is the purpose of a community bank like Prosperity Financial?" she asked when he finished. Daniel gave what he thought was the right answer: to generate sustainable profits for shareholders while providing necessary financial services to customers who meet our risk criteria. Amara's expression didn't change, but she set down her pen. "Interesting. Not incorrect, but incomplete." She leaned forward slightly. "Now, let's talk about yesterday." Daniel swallowed hard. "Ms. Jackson, I had no idea who you were. If I'd known—" "That's precisely the point, Mr. Parker," Amara interrupted, her voice still measured but with an unmistakable edge. "You shouldn't need to know that someone is powerful to treat them fairly. The criteria for loan approval should be based on financial fundamentals and business viability, not on who the applicant knows or what they look like. I didn't reject your application because of your race," Daniel said defensively, the words tumbling out before he could consider them. "Didn't you?" Amara asked simply. She opened a folder and pushed it across the desk. "These are the approval and rejection rates for business loans processed through this branch over the past 2 years, broken down by race and gender of the applicants." Daniel reluctantly looked at the document. The disparities were stark and unmistakable. "This isn't just about you, Mr. Parker. It's about patterns and systems," Amara continued. "But yesterday you were part of that pattern. My application met or exceeded every stated requirement for approval. My business has a proven track record and clear growth potential. Yet you found reasons to doubt, to question, to ultimately reject. There were legitimate concerns, Daniel insisted, though his conviction was wavering. Were there? What would you have seen as legitimate concerns in an identical application from a white male applicant? Be honest with yourself, even if you can't be honest with me. The question hung in the air between them. Daniel wanted to defend himself, to insist that he evaluated all applications equally, but the data in front of him told a different story. "I'm not here to fire you, Mr. Parker," Amara said finally, breaking the silence. That might be satisfying in a poetic justice sort of way, but it wouldn't solve the underlying problem. Daniel looked up, confused. "Then what happens now?" "That depends on you," Amara replied. "I'm implementing comprehensive changes at this bank, new lending guidelines, community reinvestment initiatives, and mandatory training on unconscious bias for all staff involved in lending decisions." She paused. "You have two choices. Resist these changes and find yourself increasingly out of step with the institution, or embrace the opportunity to grow and be part building something better." "I want to keep my job," Daniel said quietly. "That's not what I asked," Amara pointed out. "I'm not interested in reluctant compliance. I want to know if you're willing to genuinely examine your own biases and work to overcome them, because the patterns in these numbers didn't develop by accident, and they won't change without intentional effort." Daniel sat with her words, feeling a complex mix of defensiveness, shame, and uncertainty. Finally, he spoke. "I've never thought of myself as biased. I try to be fair. Most people do," Amara acknowledged. "Bias isn't about being a bad person. It's about unconscious patterns that influence our judgment in ways we don't recognize. The question is what we do when those patterns are brought to our attention." Daniel nodded slowly. "I have a lot to think about, but I want to do better." "That's a start," Amara said. "Here's what I propose. You'll participate in our new training program, and I'm assigning you to work directly with our new community development officer on our small business outreach initiative. You'll be meeting entrepreneurs from neighborhoods this bank has historically underserved. I want you to listen to their stories and review their business plans." "And my promotion?" Daniel asked hesitantly. "Is on hold," Amara replied firmly. "Not canceled, but delayed. I need to see genuine growth and understanding before putting you in a position with more decision-making authority." She closed the folder. "Consider this a second chance, Mr. Parker. That's more than you gave me yesterday." Over the next 6 months, Prosperity Financial underwent a transformation. Amara implemented the changes she had outlined to the board, starting with a comprehensive review of the bank's lending practices. New guidelines were established that maintained appropriate risk management while eliminating criteria that disproportionately impacted minority and women business owners. The bank's technological infrastructure received a much-needed overhaul, streamlining processes and creating a more user-friendly digital banking experience. Branch offices were redesigned to be more welcoming and less intimidating, with financial education resources prominently displayed. Most significantly, Prosperity launched a community business development initiative, offering specialized loan products, mentorship programs, and financial literacy workshops for underserved entrepreneurs. The program quickly gained attention in local business circles and began attracting new customers to the bank. Daniel Parker found himself at the center of these changes, though not in the way he had once envisioned. Instead of moving up to a traditional loan officer role, he became deeply involved in the community outreach program. Initially approached as a requirement to keep his job, the assignment gradually became something more meaningful. Each week, Daniel met with small business owners from neighborhoods across the city, the restaurant owner who needed capital to expand after a food truck gained a devoted following, the brothers who built a successful landscaping business despite starting with just one used lawnmower, the single mother who ran an in-home daycare and wanted to move to a commercial space. He heard their stories, reviewed their business plans, and began to recognize patterns not of deficiency, but of resourcefulness and determination. He saw businesses that had managed to thrive despite limited access to capital, entrepreneurs who had created innovative solutions to overcome barriers. Most importantly, he began to see the blind spots in his previous approach to evaluating loan applications. The rigid criteria he had applied length of credit history, traditional business education, Existing banking relationships had systematically disadvantaged capable entrepreneurs who lacked these conventional markers through no fault of their own. 3 months into the bank's transformation, Daniel knocked on Amara's office door one evening, as most staff were leaving for the day. "Do you have a minute?" he asked hesitantly. Amara gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Of course." Daniel sat, gathering his thoughts before speaking. "I want to say, you were right. About me, about the bank, about the biases in our lending practices." He placed a folder on her desk. "I've been tracking my initial reactions to loan applications compared to their objective qualifications. The patterns are exactly what you described." Amara opened the folder, reviewing the meticulous notes Daniel had been keeping. "This is thorough work," she commented. "I needed to prove it to myself," Daniel admitted. "And now I'm wondering if we could use this kind of self-assessment tool more broadly in the lending department." "You're suggesting we institutionalize bias awareness?" Amara asked, an approving note in her voice. Daniel nodded, along with a mentorship component. "I've benefited enormously from working with Miguel in the Community Development Office. Having someone with different experiences and perspectives review my initial assessments has highlighted assumptions I didn't even realize I was making. Develop a formal proposal," Amara told him. "I'd like to see this implemented." As Daniel turned to leave, he paused at the door. "I never properly apologized for how I handled your loan application that day. I'm sorry. It was unprofessional and unfair." "Apology accepted," Amara replied. "But I'm more interested in change and contrition. The work you're doing now, that's what matters." 1 year after Amara Jackson took the helm at Prosperity Financial, the bank hosted a community open house to celebrate the success of its new initiatives. The main banking floor had been transformed for the evening into a showcase for businesses that had received support through the Community Business Development Program. Local entrepreneurs displayed their products and services while mingling with bank staff, community leaders, and potential investors. In the center of it all stood Amara, now recognized as one of the city's most innovative business leaders. "Quite a change from when you took over," Harold Mercer commented as he joined her, gesturing to the diverse gathering. The quarterly numbers reflected, too. Loan volume up 22%, deposits up 18%, and delinquency rates actually down despite the expanded lending criteria. "It turns out that serving the whole community is good business," Amara replied with a smile. "Who would have thought?" Across the room, Daniel was deep in conversation with a young woman who had brought architectural drawings of the commercial kitchen she hoped to open. "Your business plan is solid," he was saying, "but I have some concerns about the location you've chosen. The rent seems high relative to foot traffic in that area." "That's why I included the delivery service component," the woman explained, pointing to a section of her proposal. "The location is good highway access, which reduces delivery times to the downtown business district." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Smart approach. Have you considered applying for our kitchen equipment financing program? It might free up capital for your initial marketing push." Amara watched the exchange with satisfaction. Daniel had grown into one of the bank's most effective community lenders, combining rigorous financial analysis with genuine interest in helping entrepreneurs succeed. His promotion to community lending manager had been approved the previous week delayed, as she had promised, but ultimately earned through demonstrated growth and commitment. Later that evening, as the event wound down, Amara found herself alone in her office, reflecting on the journey of the past year. On her desk sat a framed newspaper clipping a profile piece titled "Banking on Change: How Amara Jackson is Transforming Financial Services." The article detailed Prosperity Financial's remarkable turnaround and the innovative approaches that had made it possible. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. It was Daniel, looking tired but satisfied after a successful event. "I just approved Maria Rodriguez's loan application for her commercial kitchen," he announced. "Her projected cash flow is strong, and her experience in the industry is impressive." "Good decision," Amara nodded. "She'll be an excellent addition to our portfolio." "It's strange to think about," Daniel said, leaning against the doorframe. "A year ago, I might have found reasons to reject her application, question her experience because it was gained working in someone else's business rather than her own, or focus on her limited personal assets rather than her business fundamentals. And now I understand that loan decisions aren't just about numbers on a page. They're about potential, about creating opportunity. He straightened up. Anyway, I should get back to the reception. Just wanted to share the good news about Maria's approval. As Daniel turned to leave, Amara called after him. You know, you never did tell me what did you think when you walked in that first day and saw me as your new boss? Daniel laughed softly. Honestly, pure terror. Then embarrassment. Then this strange sense that the universe was teaching me a lesson I desperately needed to learn. And did you learn it? Daniel considered the question seriously. I'm still learning. But yes, I think I understand now what you were trying to show me from the beginning. That change only happens when we're willing to examine our assumptions and challenge the systems we take for granted. He smiled ruefully, though I have to admit there might have been less dramatic ways to teach that lesson. Perhaps, Amara agreed with a small smile, but would they have been as effective? After Daniel left, Amara turned to look out the window at the city skyline. Her reflection stared back at her, a black woman in charge of an institution that would once have denied her service, let alone employment or leadership. The transformation of Prosperity Financial was just one small step in a much longer journey toward true economic equity. But it was proof that change was possible, that systems could be reformed from within by those determined enough to challenge them. Amara thought of her mother's words once more. Walk like you own the room, because someday you might. She had gone beyond owning the room. She had remade it entirely, creating space for others to walk through doors that had previously been closed to them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new resistance, new opportunity for growth. But tonight, Amara allowed herself to savor what had been accomplished, not just her personal success, but a beginning of institutional change that would outlast her tenure and benefit countless entrepreneurs who would never know her name. She turned off her office light and headed back to join the celebration. Ready to continue building the future, she had always envisioned one loan approval at a time.